Hey everyone, my name is Clay Chaney. I'm a meteorologist at the National Weather Service office in Greenville-Spartanburg, South Carolina, here to give you the third video of 5 for Hurricane Preparedness Month for the state of South Carolina. Today's topic will be on heavy rain and inland flooding. And so for this month, we want you to prepare for heavy rain and inland flooding, but also the other hazards that come with hurricane preparedness with dealing with strong winds, tornadoes, and for coastal areas having to deal with storm surge, dangerous waves, and also rip currents. And so me and some other folks from the other three offices that cover the state of South Carolina and Melissa Griffin from the State Climate Office will give you 5 different videos really going through each hazard that hurricanes provide, and Melissa in the State Climate Office giving a little bit of background on the hurricane history for the state of South Carolina. So presentation overview, of course, we're going to focus on inland flooding and what caused it, and we're also going to take a look at some of the flood products that we issue when we have flooding in the area or expecting flooding in the area. So the 8 key factors that I want to look at is movement. Number 1, so if the storm is moving slow, it tends to bring more rainfall, and you tend to have a lot more of it, and especially over a shorter period of time, leading to flooding concerns. Storm size, so the larger the storm, the greater the area that'll be affected. So if you have both a slow-moving storm and a large storm at the same time, that's going to cause a lot of problems with flooding rainfall. Topography, there are mountains in South Carolina near the North Carolina-South Carolina state border. So this actually enhances rainfall due to the rising motion that it provides. Moisture, so increased moisture can increase rainfall. And of course, with tropical systems, they tend to bring a lot of moisture just with the system itself. Instability, so greater instability will support higher rainfall rates. The diurnal cycle, heaviest rainfall will tend to occur near the storm center overnight, and during the daytime, it'll actually favor the outer rain bands associated with tropical systems. Vertical wind shear, so in general, the heaviest rainfall will tend to be concentrated down shear of the storm center, and then interactions with troughs and fronts and jets and any other low pressure systems that tend to interact with the actual tropical system itself will modify the rainfall distribution. So we're going to look at other factors that enhance inland flooding. So of course, with extreme rainfall, with heavy tropical rain, this will overwhelm the drainage systems. And then slow-moving storms, so repeated rain over the same areas increase the flooding. Moist tropical air, so warm, humid air, fuels intense rainfall rates. Terrain enhancement, we talked about this in the previous slide, but the mountains and hills, with the rising motion that it produces, will increase rainfall totals in general. Saturated ground, so when you have wet soils, this will reduce the absorption that it can take with the rainfall that's falling and increase runoff in general. Urbanization, so with pavement and concrete, this will actually accelerate the surface flooding that's occurring. River overflow, so upstream rainfall causes rivers to flood downstream, and we saw that with Hurricane Helene, with all the rainfall that the upstate got, and it moved downstream into the river basins in the Midlands, Low Country, and PD regions, and actually provided a flood risk for the rivers in that area. Outer rain bands, so flooding can occur far from the hurricane centers with the outer rain bands, that especially if you get multiple outer rain bands moving across a specific location over a short period of time. Weather system interactions, we talked about that with troughs and fronts and jet streams and how that can actually enhance rainfall. And infrastructure overload, so levees, dams, and drainage systems all can fail if you get a lot of rainfall at one time. And this is actually an image from Hurricane Joaquin, where it impacted the Midlands and the Low Country, and you can see just the devastating results that you can get with really heavy rainfall. So just looking at some of the statistics, so roughly 90% of deaths occur in water-related incidents, most of that coming from storm surge, but you can also expect that with rainfall and inland flooding, surf, and offshore as well, making up the majority of the fatalities that are related to hurricanes. So some inland flooding facts. A hurricane does not need to make landfall near you to cause major flooding. We saw that in 2015 with Hurricane Joaquin, where it brought a fire hose of moisture to parts of South Carolina. And tropical systems can dump rain hundreds of miles inland even after the winds weaken. So typically with tropical systems, when they're out over the ocean, they have really strong winds. They have a lot of tropical moisture, lots of thunderstorms. But once they make landfall, the frictional force from land actually weakens the overall wind field, but the moisture remains intact. And so that's going to still provide a lot of rainfall despite the system actually moving hundreds of miles inland. And flooding can actually become the deadliest hazard from hurricanes, sometimes surpassing storm surge. So just taking a look at some of the actual flood products that the National Weather Service issues whenever we're expecting flooding. And there's different levels to it, and we'll go through each one, starting with flood watch. So we got to know the difference between a flood warning and a flood watch. Flood warning just means that all the ingredients in place, that the heavy rain is falling and that flooding is ongoing. And if you live in a flood-prone area, moving to higher ground, you also never want to drive through flooded roadways. Flood watch just means that the ingredients are in place. So we have the moisture, we have the lift, we have instability. With tropical systems, we tend to have all three, and especially deep moisture at that. So this just means that you need to be prepared for the potential of flooding. So looking at flood advisory, so this is more of your nuisance flooding. So the typical areas that you know will flood first when there's heavy rainfall are basically flooding at this point. And you just want to use caution when driving, and especially if it continues to rain really heavy, even after a flood advisory is issued, you want to be on the lookout for the potential of a flood warning or a flash flood warning if conditions continue to worsen. So flood warning, this is a gradual rise in flooding beginning more than 6 hours after the rainfall onset, but you still want to move to higher ground or travel and avoid flooded roadways, obey barricades and evacuation orders, and you just want to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Flash flood warning, this is more of a rapid rise in water and flooding, and this is where you start to get flooding in locations maybe you're not used to seeing flood when there is heavy rainfall. And so this is where you want to seek ground immediately and protect life first. Avoid all low water crossings and stream recreations, and if you happen to live in the mountains or in hilly terrain, avoid landslide prone areas. Flash flood emergency, so this is typically when we start to see major or record flooding, or even some cases like Hurricane Helene, we saw historic flooding. This means that life is in imminent danger and you want to avoid the area completely. Do not travel unless you are fleeing from the water, and obey barricades and evacuation orders, and immediately evacuate slide prone areas. So inland river flooding, so river floodings can be longer term events. River floods occur when the runoff from torrential rainfalls brought on by decaying hurricanes or tropical storms reach the rivers. And this is just where you get a lot of excessive rain or water in the rivers, and it can actually begin as a flash flood. And these can actually last a few hours or even last a week or longer. We saw that during Helene, where the river basins here in the upstate got a lot of rainfall, and all of that water moved downstream into the Midlands and Low Country and PD regions and caused some flooding instances there in the river basins. Urban flooding, so these are rapid events that can be as severe as flash flood and are actually caused by impervious surfaces. So streets can act as swift-moving rivers that can carry vehicles, and if you happen to live in an urban area and you have a basement, these can actually quickly fill with water depending on the vicinity of where that flood is, and can actually act as a death trap. The abundance of roads and parking lots and rooftops lead to this excessive runoff into the drainages and streams, and it's a lot more quicker than what you would see in a rural area. So here's just an example of all different types of freshwater flooding that you get with these tropical systems, and these could be hundreds of miles inland. And if you look at the bottom right at the well inland, that's in Illinois. So it just goes to show how far that tropical moisture can be carried when you have a landfalling tropical system. So tropical induced landslides. So the threshold for our area when we're talking the threat for landslides, you have 5 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period. This can lead to isolated landslides. 10 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period can lead to widespread landslides. Landslide threat depends on how much rainfall occurred in the days prior to a heavy rainfall threat. So if you actually have, a decent amount of rain leading up to a landfalling tropical system that's going to impact your area, the landslide threat increases dramatically. And we saw that with Helene with the amount of rainfall days before. And once Helene made it here, there were over 2,000 reported landslides in the southern Appalachian. So just some preparedness tips to take home with you as we start to get to the end of this presentation. You can see the best things to do is to consider your threats. Are you in a flood-prone area? And if you are, you need to find an evacuation route or know a location that's higher ground and away from where the flood is going to occur in order to make sure that you and your family are safe. Have multiple ways to receive weather and flash flood warnings, especially at night. Prepare for extended heavy rain and power outages by charging devices and stocking emergency supplies. Know evacuation routes and move to higher ground quickly. And so one of the quotes that we like to use in the National Weather Service, if you see a flooded roadway, is to turn around, don't drown. It's not worth risking your life just to get to the other side of the road. And that's all I have for you today. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on X, and you can also find us on YouTube. And we always advise people to visit our website at weather.gov/GSP to get the latest and greatest forecasts from us here in Greenville-Spartanburg. And with that, I hope that you have a good rest of your day and that the information provided is valuable.